the bee produces honey without harming the flower, without hurting the flower. We are the bee, okay, and the players are the flower, and the honey is the
Mhm.
performance. So we have to produce performance without harming the player. So coaches out there, remember that the bee produces honey without harming the flower. So let's be mindful of that.
This podcast is brought to you by Force 8 Coach, your sport, your platform. Welcome back to my podcast called Science and Sports. I'm your host, Simon, as usual, and I'm a former professional hockey player myself here in Germany. Currently working as a sports scientist, university teacher since April now. So first time I'm talking about that now in the intro, and also still responsible for the strength and conditioning of the under-7 national team here in Germany. But today my special guest, Dr. Sergio Lara-Bercial from Spain, living in England, if I'm still correct, is a professor, a coach or coach developer, and also a researcher. And I was very happy to meet you in Tampere twice already. And I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago, your
Yeah,
first
I
talk.
think it was
So very,
2022
very,
and 2023. Yeah.
yes, I'm very, very happy to have you here on my show today. How are you, Sergio?
I'm very well, Simon. Great to see you again, and thank you for the invitation to spend time talking about coaching.
Yes, I mean, I think it's in both of our worlds. I know you're not into hockey that big as I am. You shared that also a couple of times already, but I think we as coaches, we all have the same mission, and the mission is to make the players better on the ice, off the ice, or on the pitch, for example, but also as people and human beings. But before we get a little bit into all that coaching stuff, could you give me a brief rundown of your career, of how you ended up? It's now in England, for example, but obviously also your like your jobs, kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you mentioned, I was born in Spain and I grew up in Spain. Um, I I was a basketball player
Hmm.
initially. Um, I managed to get to play in Division 3 in Spain, which was a pretty high level professional league. I wasn't good enough to go any higher.
Hmm.
So when I graduated from university, I thought I'm going to take a year out from playing and from studies, go and live in the UK for a year,
Hmm.
and learn the language and then come back home. And that year became 27 years currently. So I've been in the UK for 27 years. When I arrived here, I ended up playing what I would call semi-professional basketball here in the UK. Very quickly, I had already coached in Spain, always in the junior program, so got started coaching here. Things went really, really well. Within 5 years, I was coaching national teams and Division One women's basketball, so things went really well. Because of that, I did a master's in sports psychology because I wanted to be a better coach, not because I wanted to be a researcher. Um, Kept working as a coach, then did some work for an organization called UK Coaching, which is the organization that supports coach education in the UK and coach development. And then through that, in 2011, I ended up joining Leeds Beckett University, which is where I still am at Leeds Beckett University. Completed my PhD there, looking at the psychosocial development of young people through sport, through
Hmm.
elite sport. And yeah, and since then, multiple research projects, including the one that we're going to talk about today. But it's been a completely unplanned journey. I wasn't meant to be in the UK for nearly 30 years. But here we are, and I wouldn't change anything.
Hmm. Yeah, on a little smaller scale, first of all, thank you for the introduction. I joined my current team as a sports scientist 4 years ago, and I didn't know that I would still be here but something here is keeping me here, and the surroundings and the work is just incredible. So probably the same for you, from a little visit to a current stay, kind of. So pretty funny when you talked about that. I could see myself there in a little bit smaller picture.
Yeah.
You had two talks at the coaching symposium. You had one regarding the talent development, and
Yeah.
the other one, which I asked you to talk a little bit about today with me, is about the serial winning coaches. And I was
Yeah.
pretty into that because we just wrapped up with um, the hockey season here in Germany, and especially in the first league, Berlin again won the championship, and they started the playoffs in sixth position, and they battled through and won the whole thing. And I think now, if I'm 99% sure that it was their fifth title in 6 years, and also for their coach, it was the fourth or fifth title. And it's pretty interesting for me of how those teams can be that successful, because it's not just purely about the skill of the players. There's so much more um, involved into that. So before I don't want to take anything away, but that's why you're here and you're the expert, and I would love to hear your comment on that, or your interest in that specific area of research.
Yeah, so no, look, it's fascinating. And for example, as you were saying, I don't follow ice hockey very much, but
Mm-hmm.
obviously they've managed to win 5 trophies in 6 years, and the current coach has won 4 in 5. Um, there is something interesting going on there, right? And what we've been very fortunate to do for the last decade or so is to actually look at coaches that win repeatedly, and coaches that win repeatedly at the highest level of sports. We're talking about Olympic gold medals. We're talking about world championships. We're talking about major professional leagues, and we've been able to explore their practices really, and their personalities, and also to talk to their athletes, and to go and see them working. So we've gathered quite a lot of information around, what goes into winning. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like a disclaimer from the beginning, right? We haven't been able to come up with a recipe for success, because it's not how it works. Okay, it's not. Um, every coach that we research or that we go and work with is a different personality, is a different human being. Every context is different. So you cannot say that what works here in Manchester is going to work in Berlin, or it's going to work in my hometown of Madrid. Okay. So we tend to focus on principles that we've seen, that then have to be personalized and contextualized based on the individual coach, the people they work with, and the environments they work within. There's no magic recipes. Okay, it doesn't happen like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of a starting point of what we've been doing the last 10 to 15 years. So I don't know where you want to go from there.
I'm interested in all those little um, screws and all those little details. What makes a winning coach?
Yeah,
I know there's some words missing in my head, but I think you know what I'm trying to say. That if you let's say, for example, get the players to buy in, if you build an
yeah,
environment where the
yeah,
cohesion is there, that's always some points which will at least make the percentage of not the percentage, but what makes it easier to make an environment of winning. So I'm interested in all those little details, what maybe you guys came up with could be.
yeah.
I know there isn't a blueprint, but what could be there, which separates the good coaches from the really great coaches.
Yeah. So we probably interesting to cover two different frameworks that we've developed really. One around, if you want, the day-to-day work of the coach, and the kind of things that they do on a day-to-day basis. Okay, and and we can talk about that in a second. And the other one would be more around their leadership style. How do they interact with people? Okay, how do they lead people? Um, Before we start, I should mention that obviously this is not work that I've done on my own. Okay, I've been very fortunate to work with especially two people, Professor Cliff Mallet from the University of Queensland in Australia, um, a major authority in this topic, and a great human being as well. So that's one thing. And then more recently, I've been able to work with Professor John Lyle, who is literally one of the founding fathers of research into coaching. And we've done some work together, as well as doing some teaching together at the university, which has been a fantastic experience for me. So nothing that I'm going to say today is just my work or my brain. It's a collective effort by quite a few people. So the idea of the framework for the day-to-day work of the coach, we saw that coaches really have three key areas that they need to look at. Right? One of them is developing their vision. Okay, what is their vision for what they want to achieve, right? And that might be a vision that includes clearly understanding their personal philosophy about life, not only about sport, but who are they? So how do I like things? What are my values and beliefs? Really, what do I stand for? Okay, that is part of the vision as well, because whether you want it or not, everything you do is going to be influenced by your values and beliefs. Okay, even if you're not aware, that happens. Okay, even if it is subconscious, it is still going to influence what you do. Okay, but then another element of the vision is the real. For example, if you're a nice hockey coach, okay, what is your style of play? How do you want to play? And why do you want to play that way? Do you have a really clear understanding of how you want to play? And actually, can you communicate that to the people that you work with? Is that sufficiently well communicated to your coaching staff, to your players, to even to the fan base, for example? Okay, fans are really important people. But also, an element of that vision is what we've seen that is fascinating about these coaches is that they are able to focus on today, what needs to happen today, but also on where we are going 2 years from now. Okay, they have that constant dual focus of understanding what needs to happen today, but constantly planning a little bit for the future. And that is very difficult to do, okay, especially in professional sport. I think when we work with Olympic coaches, it's a bit easier for them because they tend to work on 2 to 4 year cycles, okay, between World Championships and Olympics, and they have a bit more, if you want, guaranteed time, okay. Whereas professional coaches, a lot of the times they leave from one weekend to the next, okay, because if you lose 3 games, you could be fired, right? But what we've seen is that coaches, serial winning coaches, in the main, are able to try and think in those two timelines, really. Yes, they have to take care of today and winning today, but they're also keen to build the systems and the structures that are going to allow them to win sustainably. Okay, and they don't lose sight of the idea of building, not just surviving, but building. Okay, and they combine those two things in a really good way. Okay, so that's the vision, the idea of the vision. I don't know if you want to ask me some questions about that, or you want me to go and look at the other topics, because I could talk forever.
I have one question. I'm totally with you on that one, or not even a question, just get to it. Because when we talk about coaches, and I mean, especially in pro sports, you have to win, and in some regard, it's not about how you win; it's just that you win. But then on the other hand, obviously, a coach needs his plan over a longer period of time to, like you just shared this, to build something longer than, let's say, a weekend or a month. we can talk about a full season or more than one season where you can really have your own mentality implemented into the organization, but then you also need to have like a sporting director or someone above the coach who is really behind
Yeah,
that, right? Because if you don't have those guys, it's hard for the coach to really evolve and develop even if he loses a couple of games, to have the trust from above that he can still continue his job, right?
yeah, absolutely. And we always talk about the need for alignment between the coach and the people above the coach. To be honest, we
Mm-hmm.
talk about alignment throughout the structure. Okay,
Yeah.
if you want vertical alignment, but also horizontal alignment. Okay, so the coach needs to be aligned with the technical director and the president and the goals of the club. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and also aligned with the players. But also horizontally, the coach has to be aligned with all the staff, the assistant coaches, the nutritionists, the biomechanists, the video
Mm-hmm.
analysis. Um, Alignment is a big thing.
Yeah.
It is difficult to be aligned if you don't share the vision, and also if you don't share a common language. Okay, and by common language is that not the actual language, Spanish or German or English or no, it's
Mm-hmm.
that that you speak in the same terminology, that people really understand each other when they speak about something. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and that is something that the coaches that I've seen, they create that language. There is a real sense of you don't have to say a lot of words to understand each other because there is a lot of clear terminology that everybody understands. So there is a shared mental model of what we're trying to do, and
Mm-hmm.
that leads to the alignment, and that facilitates all the day-to-day working process, really.
Yeah. Before we come, I want to would like to have you continue on that prior topic you shared. I have just one more question that just popped into my head because I've
Yeah.
been coaching under nines for 4 years when I was, um, let's say, 20 to 24 years old. So it's a bit in the past. But do you think that some coaches are born with certain elements to be a good coach, or certain
Mhm.
traits that already makes them a little bit more advanced than someone else? Or do you think it's just purely about experience, even if it's kids or adults, that you get your experience and then you can grow?
That's a really good question, Simon. And actually, we have some data about this. So in one of the studies that we did, actually in our first study back in 2015, we actually we had 17 coaches, all serial winning coaches, and we gave them some personality tests. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
at three levels. We gave them a test around their personality traits. We gave them a test around their personal motivation, and then we did a what we call a life story interview to understand how they made sense of their life. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now, in terms of personality traits, you want what we call the first layer of personality, and we saw that not all coaches are the same in terms of their personality traits. So you don't have to be cloned, or you don't have to be a copycat of someone. Okay. However, we saw that there were some personality traits that appeared to be quite important for successful coaches. One of them, and this probably is no surprise to anybody, but they need to be pretty hardworking and organized. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
we call it conscientiousness. The name of the personality trait is conscientiousness. Hard work, organization, reliability, dependability. Okay, that's not a surprise when you have to do a job that is so complex and involves so
Yes.
many people. Okay. Then another trait that appeared very important was the idea of your sociability. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
how good you are in social situation. that doesn't mean that you have to be a joker or be able to make everybody laugh, but just be really competent in social situations, because coaching is about people. Okay, coaching is about, we can talk about tactics and techniques and all of that, but at the end of the day, it's people that are going to do all of those things. Okay, so you have to be comfortable in any social situation. And then the final trait that is quite important is the idea of being emotionally stable. Right? When you are leading people, if you are not emotionally stable yourself, it's going to become pretty tough for two reasons. One, because you're going to be stressed out all the time because it's a difficult job. Okay, and you're dealing with people, and the second one is that most likely people don't want to be led by someone that is unstable. um, Apart from some countries in the world, but never mind, don't get me there. and, and that's a big thing. You have to be, and that emotional stability means that you don't have high levels of anxiety. You that you can actually self-regulate quite well to get yourself to a state where you are functional. Um, and so we saw some good personality traits. Now, the good news for anyone listening, for example, when we talk about these things, a lot of the coaches will say, "Yeah, emotional stability is not my it's not my strong suit." Okay, and I'm there. I, I always blame it on being Spanish. Okay, but emotional stability is not my thing. Okay, and the good news is that yes, you can be genetically. So these personality traits are so 50% determined by your DNA, but 50% influenced by the environment and by your ability to work and reflect and improve yourself. So, for example, for me, and I'm still working on it, improving my emotional stability has always been something that I've been working on a lot. And especially as a coach, when in my professional environment at the university or in any job that I've done, um, I'm quite emotionally stable in those environments. It's never been a problem. When coaching, for whatever reason, which in my case I think it is that a lot of my personal identity is tied to the sport. So when things get tough, my identity gets challenged. Okay, I've had to really work hard to try and become more stable, and I will always have to work hard at that. Okay, I don't think you ever get 100% right. Okay, but the main message is that if you identify a personality trait that you think is not good for you as a coach, you can work on it. These things are
Yes.
changeable. Okay. Um, so yeah, that's probably the main message there, really.
Do you think when you talk about a coach in pro hockey, pro basketball, or on Olympic level, for example, who has high standards, that he can also, or I've formulated this way: is it possible for high standards and the care of the athletes to sustain a good team cohesion, for example, coexist
Mm-hmm.
for an good coach? Do it has to be to coexist, or does one prefer the other?
No, so actually, that's the second framework that we created. Really, the when we talk about leadership, okay, and we can jump back and forth, no problem. Um, we actually saw that the the leadership style of these people, of these coaches, was what we call caring determination. Okay, so they are very caring, but they're very determined. They have a, a relentless drive to be successful and to win and to search for excellence. So at the same time, that is balanced with a genuine desire and compassionate desire to support other people. So yes, I mean, don't get me wrong, these people are not soft, okay? And working with them, they have very high standards, and they will hold you accountable to those standards. But I say these people are ruthless, but not heartless. Okay, they also have a heart. They have a high degree of empathy for the athlete, and it's not a win at all cost mentality. Okay, which was a little bit of a surprise. I thought that these coaches would be much more win at all cost. Okay, and I think what they do really well is to balance the both. They know when to push and they know when to support, and that challenge and support balance. There's a lot of research, a lot of it not mine. So there's some great people that have done a lot of research in this space, saying that that challenge and support balance is fundamental for performance, any performance, not only sport, but the idea of balance of challenge and support, it's really important. And we saw that in our coaches really, that they can be quite tough on people, quite demanding, but at the same time that they're really supportive. Now, initially, when we started working on this, the first time that we formulated this idea of caring determination, we thought it was like the best analogy at the time was like a thermometer. Like sometimes you're really hot, really on the determined side. Sometimes you can cool it down and be much more on the caring side of things, on the seeing the person before the athlete and offering support and being very empathetic with people. Now that to an extent that still happens. Okay, there are moments where you can be very driven, and some moments where your priority might be to care for people. Okay, there might be certain moments where for a particular athlete or a team, your job is to care and support. But we've moved away a little bit from this idea of just being either or. Okay, moving from one side to the other, because what we've seen really is that it looks a lot more. The analogy that we use now is like the way a plant grows. For a plant to grow, it needs a foundation of soil, earth, okay, which for us is the foundation of trust. Okay, people have to trust you. People have to believe that you're doing things for their benefit because you want the best for them. Okay, for them individually or for them collectively as a team. Okay, and then you have to provide the warmth, the care, like a plant, the sunshine. Okay, and if those conditions are not there, then the plant doesn't grow. Okay, and so the soil, the foundation of trust is important. But then when you have to put the heat for the plant to grow, if there's no soil, okay, and nutrients there, the heat that you put in to help the plant grow will burn the plant. Okay, so our message to coaches is always, and I'm taking and I've taken this to heart personally, really in my own coaching, is spend a lot of time building that foundation of trust and care before you try to drive people forward. Because when they believe that they can really trust you, that you really care about them as human beings, that you care about them improving and becoming the best they can be, then you can drive them a lot harder. They will want to do the things that you want them to do. Because as I always say, look, we're talking about the highest level. I mean, I think this applies to everyone. But in the case of the people that we've studied, we're talking about the highest level of sport. These athletes have to do some pretty extraordinary things that to anybody that is not an athlete or has not been an athlete, it looks like, what are we doing? It looks like torture. Okay. And you're a strength and conditioning coach, right? So you understand what I mean. But it's not only the strength and conditioning, it's the traveling, it's the level of concentration, the performing in an arena with 20,000 people or in a football ground with 100,000 people. So if we're going to ask people to do these fundamentally bad things, because elite sport is asking more from our bodies and our minds that we were designed for, okay, we have to create a foundation of trust and care to help people through that, because it's completely extraordinary what we're asking these people to
Yeah. When we stay on the topic of that building trust and social cohesion for a second longer, you said we can jump back and forth, and I had
Yeah,
a couple of weeks ago, I had Alan Keane on my show, who's the
I know
uh,
Alan really well.
you know him exactly. He's the
Yeah, yeah,
basketball head coach, I think, from Great Britain, if I'm not
that's right.
mistaken. And we talked about team cohesion. We talked about building trust. And now that you're here and you even know him, do you think that those serial winning coaches already build those environments where it's easier to trust your coach, to trust the staff, so everyone gets along right from the get-go?
Yeah, and I think they do it by design. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't happen by chance. They want to
Yes.
create those environments. If we go back to the beginning, I said that in the first framework that we developed, there were three things. One was the vision, but then the second thing was people, and the third thing was the environment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And when I talk about the environment, I talk more about the both the physical elements of the environment, but also the conditions that we create in that environment. But before we get to the environment, we have to talk about people. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not rocket science or groundbreaking, but the one of the biggest realizations, as I mentioned before, about great coaches is that they're great with people
Mm-hmm.
because we work with people. They're not athletes, they're not machines, they are people. Okay, um, and we need to be able to work with them. Um, but they do that at different levels. Okay, because uh, to be able to create that environment where people thrive. Okay, um, first you have to a lot of the times select the right people. I don't think we put sometimes enough emphasis on selecting the right people for my culture, for my way of being, for my environment. Because um, a lot of the times we think that we have this magical power as a coach because we are so good that we can we can make everyone good. Okay, and that's not always true. So I think where we can, we have to select people on the basis of character as well. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that a lot of coaches that will be listening to this, they don't have the ability to select people. They go to a team and the people are already there. Okay, and so
Yes.
I appreciate that. I'm not naive, and 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 you have to work with that as well. We have to be able to then get the best out of everybody. But at the same time, at times you have to go, well, enough is enough. This person does not belong in this environment, so we have to part ways. And sometimes it might be you, the person that doesn't belong in that environment. And
Mm-hmm.
then the best option is for you to go. Um, but in relation to people, you got the idea of selecting people. Then, as you were saying, then you have to do something to unite those people. So they have to to feel that they belong something that is bigger than themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where the idea of a clear and compelling vision and goals for the group, whatever that means. It doesn't have to be winning because sometimes actually the 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 the, the vision for a team might be avoiding relegation. Okay, but you have to find something that is going to bring them together, um, and that might be the overall goal, or it might be a theme that you might want to create together. It might be related to the culture of the town that the team is in, or and it's something that this idea of developing that unity, I think it's good to work with with the players on. I think when coaches become the only person that has influence over what that goal looks like or what that compelling vision looks like, um, it can be difficult for some people to buy into it. So
Mm-hmm.
there's an element of some coaches are quite charismatic and quite good at doing this, and they can do it by themselves.
Yeah.
Um, but I think a lot of the times it's important to bring people along and to really develop this vision and these goals uh, collectively. Okay, because
Mm-hmm.
then there is a sense of ownership. Another thing that they do in developing the environment and getting the buy-in from people, from players, is to make sure that everybody feels they are developing. Okay. There's nothing that makes people feel more comfortable in an environment when they think that that environment is having a positive effect on them. That could be becoming a better player, becoming a better human being, okay, becoming a better person, okay. But the idea that the environment cares about you improving, not that the environment only cares about winning the next match, okay. So how do we ensure that players or even assistant coaches, for example? So a lot of the assistant coaches in professional sport can be quite young, and they need to feel as well that they are improving at the job, because they sometimes will lack the confidence to do that job. So that's one thing. And then the other thing that has to be part of that environment, as we were saying before, is the idea of support. Support, having systems in place, either from the coach or from the overall structure of the environment, to make sure that when someone needs, it's two ways. It's proactive support. So not waiting for something to go wrong to support people. Okay. Just putting things in place so things don't go wrong. Okay, that's the main message. But also then having systems that when something goes wrong, people still feel supported and protected. Okay, and that could be from an injury to I don't know, poor performances, or something happening, a family grievance, for example, losing a parent or losing a sibling or something like that. And then the final thing is the idea of, it's also really important that people understand how they fit in the system. What their role is in the system, so they can see if they are contributing to the system in the way they are meant to contribute to that system. I think that sometimes is something where there is a mismatch between coaches and players. Like, coaches think that players are very clear about their role and about how they are being judged and evaluated. And my experience is that that's not always the case. That sometimes players and coaches have very different perceptions of how they're going to be valued and evaluated. So closing that gap becomes really important. And then you go into the idea of the environment. Okay, and I'm going on for a little bit here, but we talk about environments that do four things. Okay, environments that are progressive, so that they're happy to look at new ways of doing things, and that they drive improvement through progress and competitiveness. We look at environments that are stable. So yes, on the one hand, you want to be progressive, but at the same time, there has to be a level of stability. And that's one of the biggest tensions in sport: stability and innovation, if you want, stability and progression. But stability has to be institutional. It could be stability in the players on the squad. Like, teams that are constantly changing players, they struggle to build winning teams, because there is not enough time to, or clubs that where coaches come in and out all the time, where you have 2 or 3 coaches every season. Those clubs tend to struggle to build anything sustainable, right? And the same for the emotional stability. Clubs that are in the front page of the newspapers every day for a different reason might be difficult for them to achieve. So, and then the other two things in the environment. So we talked about progression and stability, but then we also have to talk about responsiveness. So is the environment able to constantly meet the needs of people, okay, as they appear, and also constantly being able to meet the needs of the competition that you're in. So to give you an example, a responsive environment might be someone where, if a player gets injured and is going to be missing for a few months, can they go out into the market and find a substitution? Or do they have a succession plan from the academy of the team to bring young people into the first team. And then the final thing that good environments do, and we talked about this when we talked about the leadership, is the idea of the balance between challenge and support. So you're constantly able to strike a good balance there, where the challenge is there because that's the only way to grow and improve, but that the support is also matching the level of the challenge. So there's no casualty.
Mm-hmm. So that's the second big project on a project like thing you build up with your guys over there, to see really of how coaches can develop every little detail, every little aspect, what makes them. I don't want to talk any coach bad, obviously, but to make them even a little bit better than someone else, for example.
Yeah. So, like I was saying, look, we don't claim to have the formula for successful coaching. We're coaches ourselves. We respect coaches too much to
Yeah,
say this is how you need to coach.
yeah,
That doesn't, I will never say that to anybody. What we do is we feel, like I was saying before, we feel that we've identified some principles, some ideas that are good starting points to reflect on your coaching practice. So um, the way we operationalize our frameworks is, so we've got, like I was saying, two frameworks, right? On the one hand, vision, people, and environment around the day to day, and the other framework is the idea of caring determination. You know, and for each of those, we have some reflective tools that coaches can use by themselves or with our support, um, to explore their coaching practice. Okay, so
mm-hmm.
someone might look at for example, the area of vision. Okay, and we have a little reflective questionnaire with some ideas around, you know, how do you create a vision, or what are the elements of a vision, or what are the areas, like I was saying, a vision is comprised of your personal life philosophy, okay, your playing style, and your ability to look into the future and constantly see. And so within that, there's a number of elements that we can play with to help people reflect on how well they do those things. Okay. Um, and have some meaningful conversations that may lead to them saying, well, maybe I'm going to try and improve these, and the way to improve these is by doing this or by talking to these. And that's how we use our frameworks, really, as thinking tools for the coaches, not as um, hard evaluations or anything like that. The last thing we want to, when people listen to what we have to say, or read our book, or we interact with them, the last thing we want them to feel is that we are judging them or evaluating them,
Yeah,
because we are nobody to do that. Okay, one, because different types of coaches can be successful, and second, because we don't know them well enough to judge them, and also
yeah,
because their context is very different. So your coaching context is very different to mine.
yes,
How could I judge you? Okay, all I can do is help you reflect on you and your context, and
mm-hmm.
hopefully that's going to lead you to some realizations that hopefully will help you improve your coaching. Okay, and the
Yeah,
same for me. Like, uh, uh, if anything, doing all this research has really helped me reflect into my own coaching, uh, and to try and really be more targeted about the things that I do well, the things that I don't do so well, the things that I could improve, um, the things that I don't want to do, and understanding that I don't want to do certain things. It's not for me. Um, um, I always say that to coaches when we're doing a workshop, that some of the things that we suggest, some of the principles that we want you to explore, some of them you might go, yeah, I'm pretty good at that already. Some of them you might say, I'm not good at that, and I should get better at it. And some of the things you may say, actually, I'm not good at it, but I don't want to be good at it. It's not for me. That's not something that I want to do or want to consider, and that's fine. Okay, it's only
mm-hmm.
reflective thinking tools to help you think through your coaching practice.
Yeah. We talked I think about like 40, 45 minutes already about being a coach and how to become a better coach
Mhm.
without there being a blueprint and whatsoever. But is there anything that you experienced in your role as a coach or speaker, for example, researcher, what you could give the listeners or my listeners? Maybe there is a coach listening on his way where he could start to implement certain things, or where you are saying with your experience, if you have to pick out one thing which you could change or which you could focus on a little bit more, that this is more important than another aspect, for example,
Yeah. Um,
on
yeah,
advice, for
there's a number
example.
of things. Yeah, so there's a talk that I do that I call it the 10 lessons that we've learned from serial winning coaches. Okay. Um, so one of the lessons is that it, it is not meant to be easy. Okay. Being a good
Hmm.
coach is not meant to be easy. So embracing the difficulty. I think a lot of the times we see coaches getting frustrated because things are hard in coaching. Okay. Um, and what we're saying is things are the way they are, not the way they should. So
Yes.
um, embrace that difficulty and that complexity because it is a complex job. It's not for everybody. Okay, and if you we say this to coaches as well, like the moment you resent the job, the moment you um, hate the job, that's the moment when you should stop doing the job. Because if you get to that point where you resent it, then it's probably not for you. So that's one thing. It's not meant to be easy. Um,
Yeah.
another thing, and I'm gonna give you the top three of the 10 lessons if you want. The
For
second one
sure.
is the
Yeah.
idea of um, the idea is that the job of a coach is much bigger. What we realized in our research is that the job of the coach is much bigger than your sport. So in your case, your job as a coach is much bigger than ice hockey, and
Hmm.
in my case, is much bigger than basketball. Okay, the job entails so many other things that sometimes we don't realize. Okay. At the end of the day, the time we spend for you on the ice with the players or for me on the court, what is it? Is it 5% of your day? Really?
Hmm.
But coaching doesn't stop. Coaching doesn't stop when you are off the court or off the ice. You have the planning, you have the management, you have the relationship building, you have the logistics, you have the media commitments, you have the scouting, you have so many other things you need to do. Okay, and and again, we see coaches that resent having to do those things because they think that coaching, or in their own mind, when they started coaching, they wanted to coach because they love the sport. Okay, but then you realize that coaching is bigger than the sport, and that's where some people really become quite uncomfortable with with the idea of coaching because it's bigger than the sport.
Hmm.
Okay, and I didn't become a coach to do Excel sheets and to do um, to tag games for video scouting. Okay, and
Hmm.
but actually that's part of the job. Accept it
Yes.
or go and do another job.
Yes.
Okay, and the third lesson, if you want, is the idea that, and I've mentioned this a few times already today, but it's the idea of coaching is about people. Okay, we don't coach players, we don't coach basketball, or we don't coach ice hockey. We coach people. Okay, so again, for me, I've been able to reframe my practice as I coach people in basketball, but I coach people. I don't coach basketball. Basketball is my
Hmm.
my medium or my tool, my vehicle, but I coach people, and accepting that we have to build for me, and again, people don't have to accept this, okay? But for me, um, I've become a coach that will spend purposefully a lot of time trying to build those relationships with people, trying to um, spend time building that foundation of trust that I was speaking about before I try to talk about basketball. Okay. I have this catchphrase that I use. I talk about connection before correction. Okay. I'm not going to try and correct someone or teach anybody something until I feel like we have a connection. Okay.
Yeah.
And because only when they have the connection, the ears are going to open up. Okay. When they trust you, we only learn things from the people that we like. We don't learn from the people that we don't like. Okay. So it's important that, or we don't learn as much. Okay?
Yeah.
So yeah, those three, those would be my top three. Maybe I'm gonna give you one more. I want to give you one more, okay? If you allow me.
For sure, I do.
Yeah, mainly because, like I was saying, look, I've coached for 30 years, and it's not always been pretty or successful, okay? And one of the things that we see in coaches is that there is a lot of coach burnout. We talk about player burnout, but there is a lot of coach burnout, okay? For a number of reasons, like we were saying before, it's not an easy job. It's not meant to be easy, okay? But also the personalities of coaches, of some coaches, most coaches, in my view, are pretty conducive to stress because we want to do well. We have a strong sense of duty. We have a high work ethic. We are perfectionists. We like things to be good. Okay. We feel like a lot of the times we carry the weight of the world on our shoulders because we feel the responsibility towards the players, towards the club, towards the fans. Okay. And then on top of that, we operate in an environment that is very dynamic, and volatile, and emotionally charged, and it's a contested environment, and it's challenging, and it's very uncertain. There's a lot of ambiguity in the environment. Okay, so all those things, our personalities and the nature of the environment combine to making things quite explosive. Okay,
Yeah.
so what I'm saying is, as coaches, we need to find a way to protect ourselves against all of that, and put together some strategies that are going to help you manage all of that. And from very basic things like eat well, sleep well, exercise, okay? Find time for yourself to do something that you really like doing, whatever it is. In my case, it's fishing, okay? I like to go fishing every now and again. I'm a terrible fisherman. I never catch anything, but it doesn't matter, okay? That's not the point, okay? And also there may be some other strategies to be able to manage stress better. Like I've done a lot of mindfulness meditation over the last 10 years. Okay. I'm not a guru or anything like that, but it's helped me with a lot of things. And some people may have other avenues, okay, for that. But the idea of, as a coach, you have a responsibility to look after yourself. It's very hard to look after other people if you're not looking after yourself. If you're not in a good state yourself.
Yeah. That's some pretty wise words at the end. Not just the end, over the whole conversation. I think we could talk probably for 1-2 hours more because it's such an interesting topic because I think to the takeaway is that it's not purely about tactics and technique. It's also about, like we just said, or you described perfectly, it's about coaching people and learning and leadership, building trust, and building that environment where then, in theory, the excellence can continue over a longer period of time. And I think that's what a good coach is supposed to do. I think, please correct me if I stated that wrong, but I think
No.
we could continue talking for that another hour. And I teased it to you before. Maybe we should need to do a second part to that one.
Part two, yeah.
Yes, because it was amazing talking to you and to learn and get some insights from you. But I think it will explode the frame of the podcast here. But like I said again, thanks for sharing all those informations and giving me some insights in your work and your life, how you got there and what are your specialties in. And I think it's a very interesting topic where I would love to talk to you again, maybe in the future.
Sure, Simon, I'd be very happy to do that.
Some awesome insights there. If you don't have anything else to add on those topics,
I'm going to leave you with one observation or another phrase that I use based on your last comment. Okay, I always say to
please
coaches,
tweet
look,
it. Yes.
and this comes from my forages into Buddhism. Okay, but there's one verse of a Buddhist text that says that the bee produces honey without harming the flower, without hurting the flower. We are the bee, okay, and the players are the flower, and the honey is the performance. So we have to produce performance without harming the player. So coaches out there, remember that the bee produces honey without harming the flower. So let's be mindful of that.
It's a beautiful end to that talk. Nothing more to add on this one. Thank you so much for taking your time and joining me today. Like I said, I would love to talk again to you in the future and maybe elaborate on those topics as well. But until there, like I said again, thank you. And I really appreciate that you took your time talking to me and sharing some informations and insights. So thank you.
My pleasure, Simon. Thank you so much for the invitation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I wish you a nice evening and I hope I can talk to you again pretty soon.
Thank you. Same to you.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow the podcast, leave a rating or comment, and share it with someone who loves sports science. And for more content, follow me on Instagram at science_in_sports_. See you in the next episode.